Now we are standing in front of the F8 Crusader. The F8 Crusader was the airplane that I flew as a Navy fighter pilot and as a Top Gun pilot. I flew that for many, many years. I have lots and lots of hours in the F8 Crusader. Actually over 2,500 hours in this airplane. And this airplane really is the beginning, middle, and end of the story of the Sonic Warrior. So you could say in effect, this is the star of the show. This is an absolutely remarkable airplane. I think we should understand a few things as we begin this story and we begin this discussion on the flight deck of the USS Midway. There was a major invention in the area of aerodynamics that occurred during the latter stages of World War II. This was a breakthrough in aerodynamic design. Now remember, back then we did not know a lot about aerodynamics. We didn't have any wind tunnels, we had no computers, we had limited photographic abilities, and all kinds of things. And so our abilities to understand airflow was really quite limited. Working within that context, there were some people that had some amazing insights into aerodynamics, airflow, and aviation. One of the insights that occurred was laminar flow wing. The laminar flow wing was a huge breakthrough. It was not only a milestone in aviation, but it actually changed the course of history because it allowed the first airplane to employ laminar flow design was the P-51 Mustang. That was married to a remarkable engine that was built by Rolls-Royce. And that invention eventually found its way being incorporated in the F8 Crusader. Now, take a look at this airplane. Now, a couple of quick things to keep in mind. Number one is that the wing position is not positioned for high-speed flight. This is positioned for landing and takeoff. So just keep that in mind. The airplane is very, very sleek and very aerodynamically pure. But I want you to notice something. It's got a long, thin fuselage. It's 55 feet long. That's really important. Long, thin fuselage. And it has a thin wing. Now the wing is crucial in this whole era. For its day, the wing had some very unique features. These were features that were designed by some of the best aerodynamic engineers that we had in this country at that time. One of the features was that this wing had leading edge devices that could be repositioned by the pilot. Now, this has never been done before. The leading edge, you can see it's hinged right here, and it had two positions. One was high-speed flight, and for low-speed flight, the wing leading edge dropped down a bit. We call it a droop. It dropped down a bit, and what that did, it gave us more lift at lower airspeeds. At the higher airspeeds, we didn't need it. This was the first airplane to incorporate such a thing, and it was a huge aerodynamic breakthrough. In addition to that, I want you to come around here and take a look at this. In addition to that, you can see that the wing was very thin, and it was in fact symmetrical, which means that the wing being symmetrical, when these leading edge devices are raised to the up position, or we call it the high speed position, another term that we could also use, to the supersonic position. So the wing was designed to operate efficiently both supersonically and subsonically by changing the position of the leading edge of the wing. That was done by the pilot. That was my job, is to change the position when necessary. When the leading edge devices were raised, that gave us a wing that was optimized for supersonic flight. The Sonic Warrior era essentially began with this airplane. On its first test flight, this is really quite amazing. On its very first test flight, the airplane went supersonic. They did not intend it to do so, but it did. It was so fast and so quick to achieve sonic flight that on its very first flight, it actually went supersonic. The airplane was a marvelous fighter, not only because of that, but certainly primarily because of the fact that its speed exceeded all other speeds of all other airplanes by a huge margin. Now here you can see Colonel John Glenn's name on the side of this airplane, right below the canopy. Colonel John Glenn was involved in what was officially called Project Bullet. And what that was a speed run across the country. So it went from the Pacific to the Atlantic, essentially, flew across North America. And they were involved, John Glenn was the pilot. This was a major effort to set a speed record for an aircraft crossing North America without stopping at supersonic speeds. And John Glenn was able to do that, deserving enormous credit. He set that record. That record has not been broken. The time was 3 hours and 23 minutes to cross North America in an airplane without stopping. Quite an amazing accomplishment, and that's primarily why his name is on this airplane, because he was one of the early pioneers of supersonic flight and a sonic warrior, as it turns out. So I want you to look at, from the trailing edge of the wing, look forward, and you notice how thin that wing is. That is a perfect wing for supersonic flight. It's a remarkable achievement. They did a lot of work utilizing the NASA wind tunnels to come up with an optimum design. I think they did. I think they pretty well nailed it in terms of aerodynamic performance and refinement. And that is the primary reason why this airplane was so important in my story as the Sonic Warrior, but also in naval aviation in particular. Yeah, I want to show you something about the engine, which is really kind of remarkable as well. Now here we're looking at the back end of the engine. This is the exhaust area, and the engine was also a breakthrough design. It's a Pratt & Whitney engine called the J57. It was unique design, very advanced, and really quite reliable. The Pratt & Whitney company deserves a lot of credit for building this engine. It was very, very capable, and it produced a considerable amount of thrust for the day. Now, this J57 was equipped with an afterburner. An afterburner is part of the engine that increases thrust dramatically over short periods of time. You can't use the afterburner for long periods, but you can use the afterburner for short bursts of speed. And that proved to be very, very effective and enabled this airplane to quickly achieve supersonic flight. And that is something that we were grateful for as Navy pilots, fighter pilots. We wanted to get to supersonic or high speeds as quickly as possible because that gave us all kinds of advantage in air combat. So for the weapon systems, this airplane had typically would carry 2 missiles. It could carry as many as 4, 2 on each side, mounted on the forward part of the fuselage, not under the wing. That was pretty important. We didn't want anything hanging from the wings because that degraded performance. The other thing that this airplane had, and this was his primary weapon system, was guns. These here, it had 4 guns. They were actually called 20 millimeter cannons, 2 on each side. And this gave it enormous firepower for close-in air combat. I don't know if many realize this, but even today, the modern fighters still carry guns. I know it sounds kind of weird, but that's true. All right, so we're still building fighters that have guns as well as missiles. Achievement. Our job and my job was to learn how to optimize its operational performance, because there's all kinds of things that we had to do, we had to consider, we had to incorporate in our training, in our practice, in our preparation for combat. We worked endlessly on perfecting our skills to achieve the highest level of performance that we thought was possible. I think we did that. I think we have proven that during the Vietnam conflict as well as other places.